Okay, remarkable evening, but you have to give you 15 more minutes. No, it's okay. Dr. James, thank you so much again for being with us this evening.
Well, my pleasure.
But we still need to make sure that we get this history right. And so one of the questions that you have is to look at how we tell that story now. And you've got a map that you've been given that is supposed to be what we're supposed to be doing, and we've asked you to identify what's missing on the map that most people get today. Quite frankly, the map that you received is the map that if you walk into the History Center today, that is the map that you will get. I will tell you that map will be out of print. In fact, if you pick lots of them tonight, they'll be out of print faster. And so what was exciting was to look at what you suggested was missing in the map. And I'm going to give you some homework, a little bit of homework tonight, because we are working on, with the Slave Trail Commission, putting together a route that will combine a lot of things in downtown. And I'll tell you what the parameters are so that you can kind of think about this when you take this map home and kind of go, okay, what? We want to do this as a giant public art project sometime, I think, in April. TED Talks are coming to Richmond, and we'd like to announce at TED Talks that the day following TED Talks, we'll be on the street actually marking something through Richmond that will combine to create a 10K walk. Now, if that's the so if you suddenly put that parameter on it, it makes it a little more interesting because you want to, and so the first pass of this was all National Historic Landmark sites in the city. And the map that we're going to give you this evening actually does all of them with the exception of two, because you can't walk that far. One is Monument Avenue and one is Hollywood Cemetery. Every other national landmark in the city is actually on this route. There's more that has to be added because there is a bias in national historic landmarks because most of them tend to be sort of European history. And so the notion of adding a lot of things to the site, from the slave trail to Maggie Walker to the river and everything in between, and connecting all the neighborhoods, was sort of the plan. Now, does it include everything? It doesn't. It really doesn't. We know that. There are certain ones that we think are really important, but each neighborhood we're hoping will put together. For instance, it gets you to Jackson Ward, but Jackson Ward needs to put together a comprehensive. You can't do that and get everything together. Church Hill needs to do a comprehensive walk of Church Hill. Yes, even Fulton. Yes, Fulton, and a variety of other ones. So that the thought is to create one giant loop, and I'll give you the quick history of how this happened. The Chamber of Commerce went to Boston, saw the Freedom Trail, and said, let's do something like that in Richmond. You know what? The Freedom Trail was done in 1952. It was 20 years before the Freedom Trail actually got marked on the street. I think we can do things a little more quickly here, but we're going to have to kind of do this in an interesting way. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you, for you to leave when you leave tonight, a proposed route. This is not final route. Please, this is part of why we're all here. So that when we come back for our next assignment in the 1970s, we can have a more involved conversation about it. One, going to look at what the map is today, what's been added in the last 3 months, and what we might be able to add. So that's the assignment, but let's see what we discovered tonight.
So what I did was took all of your input and then very quickly tried to go through and look for the major themes that emerged from what everybody in this room said. So the first part of it was what the major themes were that happened in the 1960s. So these are things that were said more than once, right? That's the theme. So it's not every individual response. But the things that came up over and over and over again that we need to make sure are part of the way we tell our 60s history. The civil rights movement in Richmond, particularly the Tallheimer sit-ins. That came up multiple times. Desegregation, as well as the resistance to that, massive resistance. Annexation, someone said the annexation saga, which I thought was a good way to phrase that. And then finally, the highway construction and destruction of neighborhoods that accompanied that. There were a couple of really specific things that I thought were interesting that didn't rise to the level of themes, but were kind of good things. One was the 1962 Crown Oil Company fire on the James River in Fulton. I didn't know about that particular one personally. And then also the flood in '69, Camille, that was the kind of basis for tearing down Fulton, the premise for tearing down Fulton. And then there was somebody posed a question, which I thought I'd pose to everybody, which is, did black folks patronize the legendary Santa?
No.
Y'all can answer that one yourselves.
Do you have a picture with Santa Claus, Carter?
I don't know if it's who lost this, but I've taken a picture with the Santa Claus.
Was it?
I worked with Santa's helper in 68, 69, 70.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So someone got the question answered, hopefully. But these are the major themes that came up around what needs to be told about Richmond's history in the 60s. The part about what's... why are we not working? There we go. What was missing off the map? All of these things had more than 2 responses, and I put them in order of their occurrence. So the number 1 thing that people said is missing is the slave trail. Number 2, African burial ground. Number 3, Lumpkin's jail. The Jefferson Hotel is not on that map, and a bunch of you noticed that, picked up on it. The Hippodrome, specific neighborhoods. A couple people named specific neighborhoods, but there was, I think, 3 or 4 people who said neighborhoods should be marked on this map. And then finally, 3 folks said the site of the Eggleston Hotel should be marked on there. Yeah.
Excuse me, I just, just for posterity's sake, we have this thing, those of us who do Kwanzaa, one of the principles is Fuji Chagaleo, which is self-determination, which means that you have to take responsibility for naming yourself. And when you call the slave trail, it's making it go into the memory of everyone as being that these people were identified as slaves. And I would prefer if everyone would embrace the name, the Trail of Enslaved Africans. So please, when you write it, just think about the fact that I am representing everybody that's in that ground, and a lot of people who are still living, that we reject the name slave trail.
Absolutely, and I'm very familiar with that conversation. I believe that there is the official commission is called the Slave Trail. And
well,
I'm just putting this out there for part of where that conversation needs to go is there is an official body that has adopted that name, and the labeling is coming from that official body. And so that conversation needs to get to the folks that are part of that.
Just because they say it doesn't mean that this community. Right, I'm saying I represent the discourse coming out of the community, and they represent the political structure, and there's a difference, and I'm saying in this forum I don't see any government officials, therefore. Call it what you want, the Trail of Enslaved Africans.
And thank you for raising that for the group's attention. And I will say that that's probably one of the things about putting it on this map that's going to be a challenge, because part of our framework for the conversation was what's going on the map. And that's going to be driven partially by the politics and the officials, but I appreciate you bringing that to the attention. And in fact, the African burial ground, there were a number of different names that were put out there for that one. I collapsed them all into that particular one, trying to honor what I've heard a number of people say about that. So I went with that name, but absolutely, that is it's a complicated question. How do we honor the people that went before?
Ask the people who are of the descendant community what they want.
Absolutely.
And we're saying that we would like to be known as that being the Trail of Enslaved Africans. And if you disregard that, after we've spoken publicly, then you are no longer serving the people and you're out of order.
Thank you. The must-see, and I apologize, I can't edit my slide after what you just said. So, and this is in no particular order, but these are the things that people said more than once was on their must-see list. So, the James River, in particular Belle Isle, and then related sites, Canal Walk and Flood Wall. The museums, the ones that were named multiple times, are up there. MOC is the Museum of the Confederacy. The cemeteries, Hollywood, Evergreen, and African Burial Ground, all got multiple mentions. The Trail of Enslaved Africans and Lumpkins. Cheers when I facilitate. New experience for me. Multiple neighborhoods, Churchill, Shaco Slip, Monument Avenue, all got multiple mentions. Maggie Walker and the National Historic Site. The 17th Street Farmers Market, I thought was interesting, was on several people's must-see lists. Jefferson Hotel, and then a bunch of people mentioned restaurants. Some of y'all named them, others just said restaurants, but clearly that's part of our Richmond culture. So do you want me to put the map up here on the screen? So the proposed map.
And again, we're going to have to work on terminology and a lot of other things. And I hope that that can spur a bigger conversation, particularly in the African American community, about how the vocabulary. Because want to get it right, but we need guidance. And I think that is a tough one. And so please help us as we move forward on this on what's the language that we use, because it is going to be an interesting conversation. The important part at this point is to make sure that these sites are on the map. And so the map that we're going to pass out, please don't get crazy.
I have a question about Ralph White.
Yes.
Just, retired and everything. He had this booklet that was like a map of Chaco Valley and in relationship to the industry that took place in Chaco Valley. So I don't know, was that referenced at all to pinpoint some of the, because I know when you go down to Chaco Valley, there's buildings, there's little markers, and it says maybe this building was that, there's a whole bunch of stuff that was going on. We had a map that pointed out, like corner to corner, what store was what, like you could buy insurance or bounty hunter or whatever.
One of the new pieces of research that's just been done by Maura McGinnis, an incredible book that really begins to look in some interesting ways at identifying. I think I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to be, whatever I say, I'm going to be in trouble, I think. But I think by focusing just on lumpkins, we really deny the size and scope and magnitude of trade. And so that what I think we need to do is make sure that people begin to see the pervasive and yet concentrated nature of the slave trade in Richmond. And that's hard to do on a map. But I'll tell you that I'm going to but that you're absolutely right that I think that there needs to be enhancements to all of the way we talk about Richmond's history. And this is just a proposal to sort of get people to think about, if you're bringing someone to town, what would you do with them? And I'm going to just kind of do a quick list of the things that you'd see along the way, and then we'll reconvene. We'll reconvene in the 70s. But other than those big landmarks, you've got the canal, the Christopher Newport Cross, the Holocaust Museum, the site of Libby Prison, Tobacco Road, the old Henrico Courthouse, the Churchill Historic District, the Elmira Shelton House, the site of Elizabeth Van Loo's house, the Poe Museum, the Reconciliation Monument, Lumpkins Jail, Shaco Slip, St. Paul's Church, the site of the Freedmen's Bureau, the site of the Freedmen's Bank, the Civil Rights Monument, Memorial Hospital, which I think is an important thing, the hospitals in this neighborhood, the James Monroe Building, the site of St. Philip's, the Library of Virginia, the new and old City Hall, the Maury House, Lee and Grant House, Black History Museum and Cultural Center, Linden Road, Ken Valentine House, Bowling Haxall House, Richmond Public Library, the Ward Cassidy House, and so that this is a pretty comprehensive 10K walk, given the sort of parameters that we're working with. Does it get everything in every neighborhood? No, because if you draw a line from one to the other, you can only get so far. But this is the beginning version, and would love to, when we reconvene in 30 days, to continue the conversation. But Here's a really interesting opportunity about 2015. When all those folks start coming to Richmond, we have a way to say, because what happens now is someone goes to the visitor center and there's no really, if you ever try to navigate this city, it's impossible whether you're walking. We'd like to encourage people to actually walk it because suddenly you understand the city better. You can understand the stories that Dr. James has told us even about actually walking that Broad Street. You know, it's not about driving by in your car. And I think that getting people onto the street really make a difference. Walking by the side of Lincoln's jail, walking across the bridge, those are things that make a real difference in your experience versus the zoo. So thank you for coming this evening. We're going to check roll so that there will be a prize at the end for those who attend all 5. If you have thoughts between now and then, or can't make the next one, please just email me. We'll have some time cards at the front desk.
Are you giving something away this evening too?
Oh, we are.
Don't leave yet. There are prizes. While we're getting the prizes set up, if you could take your keypad and pass it towards the center aisle so we can collect those, that would be very helpful.
It's kind of close to 64 East. It's really convenient to get to in a lot of people's neighborhoods. There's going to be a lot of speakers, a lot of organizers in the communities throughout Richmond, a lot of your neighbors, a lot of people you know. It really be great if a lot of people really get to know your neighbors. There's going to be a lot of work on issues that affect all of us living in Richmond. If you can come out to it, that would be great. So today's Saturday, and it starts at 8. It goes all day. Come to as much as you can. There's going to be a lot of great workshops, a lot of people for you to learn a lot. Registration is free.
Thank you. And the winner of the Hollywood Cemetery book, Ron Alpern.
All right, thank you all for coming. The next one is the first Thursday in February. So hope to see you all then.
Thank you.